And we are live.
All right. All right. As we good? I guess.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But yeah, I mean, basically, Reservoir Media bought De La Soul's whole catalog. Well, whole catalog consisting of the first 6 albums for $100 million USD. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of music.
Ooh.
That was it? Just 100 million?
Yeah,
because I could have took if that's all it was, I could have took care of that a long time ago.
Yeah,
and then
we could have chipped in and Ben gave Paz the Nooses Masters.
For real.
But whatever the case is, I'm so happy that they finally, had acquired the rights to, legally own their music, to have their music and do what they want with their music, which means
right.
Finally catching up to where everyone else has been for the last several years.
Right.
And actually, putting the music that a lot of the fans know and love. Is not to say, don't get me wrong, they have dope albums, that they've come out with, recently, but a lot of the fans wanted, 3 Feet High and Rising. They wanted Stakes is High,
So stupid question. I'm sorry.
No,
stupid question for the both of you actually. So because they didn't own their stuff, right? Was their stuff still being used, i.e., say for commercials or movies or anything like that?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Okay, so
I was just going to say what happened was with streaming, you have to renegotiate. Business with your label.
Okay, because that was my question. How does compensation work with that?
Because it's still when it's used in movies and commercials and things of that nature, it's operating on the old royalty rate. So you get compensated based on the old deal. Streaming is such a new entity that there needed to be renegotiations. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but part of the issue with why they weren't on streaming sites was that Tommy Boy didn't clear samples. At the time that De La Soul was at their peak, sampling was still relatively new. They didn't really know how to monetize it, and they meaning the higher
right.
So it's almost like one of those things where it goes under the radar until it's no longer under the radar. And now that streaming kind of debuted right around the time that the industry had shut down the mixtapes because for sample clearances and things like that. So it's nuances and layers to that conversation, but the basic gist of it is they would get compensated based on their old contracts, which doesn't apply to streaming, which would basically explain why they needed to renegotiate and why a third party had to come in.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
No such thing as a stupid question.
Just inquisitive idiots.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, the reality is it definitely was something we needed to talk about, especially because remember, for those of you out there listening, if you go back to our first combination of videos, we basically talk about sampling.
What that, DMX?
Hey, rest up.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Pause for a second. If you go back to the beginning of, this podcast, you'll see the first groupings of videos that we recorded. Right. And we basically talked about sampling, masters, publishing, copyright, clearances. We talked about those things, and we talked about De La Soul. And, since this was a few months back, I can't exactly remember where they were in point of reference to when we were filming.
They were nowhere near where they ended up.
Got you.
I think what's the name of the company that bought their
Reservoir Media?
Yeah, Reservoir Media wasn't even in the picture yet.
Got
at the time that we recorded. they came into the picture almost right after we put the segment up.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was like,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talk about all of this, and as we continue the conversation about, sampling and, sonic ancestry and connecting the dots musically, it's important to remember that copyright laws, clearance, laws or legalities in terms of clearances and sampling has changed as well. So back in the 90s, it was so different. And it was much more of a, I don't want to say a free for all, but it was definitely
call it what it is.
I mean, because you gotta think about it, like we said before, early on, how we said sampling has been around for as long as probably anybody can remember.
Right.
But the legality and the monetization of it is what needed to catch up to the sampling portion.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right.
Which it always happens like that. So now coming back to this point, I think everything is starting to catch up with itself, and we see one of those monumental moments in musical history, especially in hip hop musical history. I think it's so important to mention that it's not just music overall, but it's in hip hop music. To see this sort of achievement, to see this sort of victory is important. And I absolutely, this is one of my favorite hip hop songs. Definitely.
Yeah, it's my favorite De La Soul track.
Look,
hands down.
Yeah, man. This is high. Like,
Ree, you itching. Go ahead, go for it.
Go ahead.
Because I've been quiet. I
know. That's what I'm saying. Let it rip.
Me and Lex, we share the same sentiment. So that's why I was able to be quiet, because I'm like, she's saying exactly what I want to say.
Well, say it how you gonna say it then.
I'm gonna switch it up. So when we talk about Stakes is High, and I'm gonna be all over the place because there's so much I want to say.
But hold on. But hold on. I love, like, and I just gotta put this out here for the people. Like, I love how you go into your joint, because you be like real smooth, like, all right, so this is what we gonna do. You know what I'm saying? Like, real smooth. So I just don't mind me, y'all. Don't mind me.
Listen, man. I gotta keep up with y'all, man. Y'all so eloquent, so I have to do my part.
Go for it, brother.
So one, I want to give Jay Dee so much credit for finding that sample.
Yeah.
For finding Swahililand, and it's funny because when I was doing research, I always start with Tidal. Like that's the streaming service I use. Okay. So I'm listening to Swahililand on Tidal, and I'm like, I hear it, but I don't hear it the way he used it.
Right.
So I go on YouTube, and I found an extended version. Extended version is about 9 minutes long.
You know what's crazy is I thought that was the regular version. That's the one I always been listening to.
Listen, it be like that sometimes, but that's a different discussion for streaming services and putting things up. Totally different discussion. So when I hear that version, I'm like, oh, there it is. It kicks in around the 7 or 8 minute mark. And it kicks in hard as hell.
Yes, it does. Yes,
I was like, oh, baby,
it's like that.
I'm like, oh, baby, where you been all my life? So, sorry, pup. That was my fault. I walked into that. So yeah, at that segment around the 7 or 8 minute mark, I lost my mind, and it felt good to hear the exact part that Jay Dee was like, you know what, I'm about to go crazy. And before I go into De La Soul, there is a 10-minute version of Ahmad Jamal. I forget where he is. I don't want to say he's at the Kennedy Center. I forget where he is, but it's him and John Hurt. John Hurt was on the bass. Yaron Israel was on the drums.
No. That was a dope performance.
Yeah. Okay, you saw it.
Yeah.
I think we all saw it.
I watched that and almost blew my brains out. I was like, this is insanity.
Yeah.
Nothing should sound this good. And I found a really good interview with brother Jamal, where he said, I thought this was a profound quote. I actually wrote it down to share with you guys. He once said in an interview, every artist has a model that they emulate, but if you're fortunate, eventually you find yourself.
Ooh.
The reason I bring that up is because that's what hip hop is.
Right.
That's what all music is, really. But specific, since we're talking hip hop, right? Hip hop is still, it's only 40 years old. In terms of a genre, it's still in its infancy.
Wow.
So sampling is hip hop trying to find its way, trying to find its voice. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Now, with that being said, stakes is high. Let me just leave with this. That is my favorite De La Soul song.
Yes.
It's actually the song that really made me a De La Soul fan. Because a lot of their music, I don't want to say preceded me, but I was 12 when Stakes is High came out.
Right.
So at that age, now you starting to really tune in to what you're listening to, as opposed to Big Brother or Big playing the records, which of course I know Buddy and all that, the native tongues, of course. But Stakes is High was released in the middle of the East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And Stakes is High is very much a commentary on where hip hop was at that point. And it's funny because that was their first album where Prince Paul wasn't involved.
Right.
So Prince Paul's not involved. And I remember hearing people say that they sounded angry. They didn't sound as peaceful as they had prior to this point. And they caught a lot of critical flack for that. A lot of people didn't like the fact that they sounded so bitter and so angry. And I believe Maceo ended up saying in an interview, it's funny that we caught flack for that back then, and now everybody's kind of feeling what we were saying back then. And he said this around, I can't remember when the interview actually was. It was definitely in the 2000s. It might have been around the auto-tune era. It might have been around the lean era. I don't know. But he was like, it's funny that the same dudes, and I think he might have mentioned Jay-Z, but I definitely feel like he was talking about Jay-Z because he was saying, Stakes is High. We were speaking against materialism. Now all the rappers who were materialistic back then are now saying now what we were saying to them. And now it's kind of like, we tried to tell you, so
right.
I just really appreciate what Stakes is High meant to the culture. I love the line from Paz that said, a meteor has more rights than my people. Like that was,
right.
That line, too. That line still sticks with me to this day. This day, that line still means something to me. So I'm gonna stop talking, but I definitely want to say that.
Let me jump in, right? Okay, so again, I feel like Ahmad Jamal, right? For the sake of y'all that are watching, hearing, seeing, being, however you're absorbing this, Ahmad Jamal is going to be a repeat offender on this show because as we dig into the history of all this music, I'm starting to realize how much of an influence he was in hip hop. And I say every time I watch him in a performance or listen to his stuff, I want to learn how to play the piano. Unfortunately, I got told earlier this week that I don't have hands for piano. So my feelings was a little hurt, but hey, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I just had to I guess I just had to stick to this, right?
Yo, wait. Go ahead. Just I don't want you to lose your thought, but
okay. So right. So I don't never lose nothing that's already lost because it's already lost. So
okay.
So
if you listen a little faster, you wouldn't have to catch up.
Right. So basically, right. So Ahmad Jamal, again, repeat offender. I feel like we're going to talk about him throughout the course of us doing this this podcast that we do. We're going to bring his name up. His name is going to come up several times. Now to speak on the De La Soul piece, I'm not even going to echo because I'm gonna just get my own voice, right? So Stakes is High is my favorite De La Soul track because really, like you said, because of that hard hitting sound that Jay Dilla took from the Swahililand track. But what I noticed and definitely loved about it, and if y'all can remember, y'all being the people, seeing me kind of like go crazy a little bit because you start going into the bars of it. The bars of this track are just like it's wild. And I always say it's crazy because you got to think sometimes is some stuff just ahead of its time because like you just said, they caught flack for kind of quote unquote coming out or sounding angry or whatever. But in today's era of music, you can think about like J. Cole, for example. He had a track not too long ago, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but almost kind of like echoing the same sentiment, kind of like schooling these young boys and all of that kind of thing. But I'm gonna read this one thing, right? This bars that just was like just so relevant. He's I'm sick of itches shaking asses. I'm sick of talking blunts, sick of Versace glasses, sick of slang, sick of half-ass award shows, sick of name brand clothes. Like, is that not in essence, and not saying nothing bad, but is that not in essence what hip hop is right now in a sense? Like,
so you know what? That's what hip hop is and what it always will be, because there are always there's lanes to it. The issue with hip hop and music in general, because it applies to pop too, is what they push to the top. You know what I mean? Like, there's only now do you really kind of see a balance in hip hop. You no longer have to focus on what you dislike about the culture. Music is so easily accessible now that you can find something that you like. But back in 1996, all you were getting was Puff and Death Row and the beginning stages of Rockefeller, which is fine. I love all that. But from De La Soul's perspective, it's like, yo, we was dropping knowledge. Like,
right.
Why is there no longer a lane for this?
Right. Lex, get up in there, Ahmad Jamal, please.
Well, actually, before I get to Ahmad Jamal, I actually want to share some quotes that I've taken from the song as well. Okay.
We all got bars today.
Because the song is so what they say is so poignant. There's so many different bars in that song that I had to grab some. So for me, one of them was, I think that smiling in public is against the law because love don't get you through life no more.
No, that was on my notes too. I forgot to say it. Thank you.
I mean, for me, and then this was the other one. Let me see. Neighborhoods are now hoods because nobody neighbors, just animals surviving with their animal behavior. And I think that also speaks to, kind of like the different changes that were happening as well. Like that shift in the culture. That shift, because it's not just a shift in the hip hop culture. See, what we have to remember is the hip hop culture is reflected upon like what's going on in the larger
Talk it.
So when things are happening in hip hop, it's only a reflection of what's going on in the wider world. So like it's the art imitating life and all of that is really like we are the ones that tell the culture what it is. Then if the culture is going in a certain way, then it's obviously reflective of what's happening like in our neighborhoods, what's happening in our schools, what's happening on the block, like all of that matters. So
this is the conversation we needed to have.
Crazy? Go ahead, Ray. And keep this. You know what's crazy? I was gonna make that same statement when we discussed UGK.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
That same statement verbatim. That's why I was looking at you like I'm.
Wow. See, great minds, yo, great minds.
Yo,
I guess mine wasn't so great because that was over my head. Like,
no, you in there.
Right.
Wait, I look at shit like that too.
No, you know what? But that tells you the power of the song. What was happening, like how deep the changes were. Going back to that time when the song was coming out, like how things were changing, and how much they were kind of like prophesy, like it was a prophecy in a sense.
Right.
Like, you know, they were really seeing. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just had a thought, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just basically like it was a prophecy in a sense of kind of like they were seeing, because they've been in the game for a minute, so they were seeing like kind of what was going on. And I think it was very telling. Like they came out with the song, we were all able to pinpoint certain aspects of the bars and pull it out because it was so clear too. It ain't nothing to it. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't deep. I'm just saying like it's so clear cut what they were saying. They could see it exactly for what it was.
Yeah, it's easily understandable. And to piggyback off of what you said, you have to remember that prior to 96, we're coming off the heels of Public Enemy and NWA, and the mainstream artist had a message.
Right.
Somewhere, even Nas, because Nas is what, 94?
Right.
So after that, things get a little more flashy, which is fine. But when you've seen something for so long, you kind of have to speak on that narrative. Let me say this. So real quick, before I give my final thought, that's it's okay. I'll find it.
She stole hers in first.
Right. Her final thought. So anyway, there it goes. You got it. All right. So when Stakes is High dropped, Tupac took it as a diss. Tupac thought that some of the things that were said in Stakes is High, as well as what was said on a couple songs on the album, were directed towards him and Naughty by Nature. So that diss that he took at De La Soul on Against All Odds, I believe it is. Everybody, niggas looking like Larry Holmes, slapping and sick. That's directed at De La Soul because of what he took offense to in this record, well as on that album. And before I give my last closing thoughts, I want to give a shout out to De La Soul for putting me on the Mos Def. Mos Def is on that Stakes is High album.
Yes.
I forget the name of it. Is it Big Brother Beat? Yeah. That was De La Soul's. That was Mos Def's introduction to the masses on that project. I will always love Stakes is High. I am so happy that they're putting out their music on their terms. Again, it will be dropping in November, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to discuss Mr. Jamal because he is great. I'll bring up the next time we talk about him some of the things that I discovered while doing this episode, while doing research for this episode. You know, at one point, they didn't consider him one of the greatest jazz musicians.
What?
Yeah. At one point, it took a career. They call it a career renaissance, a creative renaissance.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in another episode. But my respect for Ahmad Jamal is. Thank you, sir.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Max, final thoughts?
Oh yeah. Final thoughts from me is I am a stan of Ahmad Jamal. I absolutely love his music, and that part that everyone is familiar with, that Jay Dee basically, like, you know,
doom 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 doom.
Yeah, that part. So basically, we're talking about the piano and like the bass, and you basically call it a vamp. So it just runs for however long, it just keeps repeating itself. So they vamp out essentially on that part. It is so, the way that it goes through your body when you hear it. I was listening to it actually when we were doing the research for this, and I had my headphones on, and first of all, don't sleep on the whole track. Listen to the whole track first second to the last. It is an incredible song all the way through. But definitely
amazing composition. An
amazing composition. But when you get to that vamp part, when it finally comes in and you can hear that, like, because it starts to rush. Like when you're really into the song, you hear the bass going, you hear the percussion like in each ear, like the way that it's framed in the stereo.
That joint sound like God is coming.
Yes, look. So I'm listening to it. I hear the percussion here. I hear I hear the drums in the background. I hear the bass. I hear just all of the songs. And then it comes in on that vamp. Man, let me tell you, it is a beautiful, beautiful moment. So Ahmad Jamal will definitely be revisited in future conversations, but I am a stan. I have no problem with saying that. He is one of the most iconic geniuses to ever come through jazz music, American music. And I'm just really glad that we have people in hip hop, producers in hip hop, who could hear the genius of his music and gift us with the opportunity, to hear his music in a different way.
Well said.
Shizz, what you got, baby?
Oh, what I got? Okay, so what I got is the same thing y'all already said. Mr. Ahmad Jamal, beast on the piano, beast in jazz. Again, repeat offender. This won't be the last time you hear from Ahmad Jamal from us. De La Soul. Again, stakes is high. Yes, baby, stakes is high. The stakes is high. This is the track that we were going to talk De La Soul. This is not going to be the last time we're going to talk De La Soul. But again, this was a conversation I kind of felt like we needed to have under the circumstances of everything, especially with everything that we discussed. And also, I want to give a big shout out to Maury Povich, because that video was so I just want to make sure I can slide that little piece in there, because that was a dope video. You know what I'm saying?
So it was. I went because at first I was like, "What?" And I did not remember.
It just. What's he doing in that video?
You know what? To this day, I have no clue, but it worked. You know what I'm saying? So, shout out, like I said, shout out to Maury Povich.
Oh my god!
And that was Maury pre You Are Not the Father.
Right, exactly. So yeah, shout out to Maury, shout out to De La Soul, Jay Dilla on a beat. Yes. I mean, what else would you expect, yo?
Right. So, genius all around.
So all that being said, we talked a whole bunch of De La Soul bars. We talked a whole lot of Ahmad Jamal keys. So Alexa, please drop your bars and your keys, please.
All right, here we go. Once again, thank you so much for listening, for tuning in, and for commenting as well. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to let us know what samples you want us to talk about next. Don't forget to stay tuned for the next episode.
Boom, 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 boom. Doom, doom, doom.
Ooh, that joint goes so hard. Oh my
like you
god.
Feel that mug in your chest, like.
Oh my god.
That's when you. Yes. I swear I heard that joint and was like, Jehovah Allah, is that you?
Like I don't even know.
Got angels coming on chariots.
It don't even matter who you were talking to. Like
somebody is coming.
Right. That joint goes so hard, but then to me, it's like. I wonder if he named it Swahililand because for him, he was feeling sort of like that connection to Africa and like wanted to express that through.
And that might be what you feel. You feel that.
Right.
We're talking Sonic Ancestry, but that might just be the ancestry.
Like ancestors like coming. Oh,
right.
What? Oh my God, I want to go.
Again, you feel that joint in your bones.
Oh,
like,
yes.
1,000%.
And thank you for clarifying what instruments was being used.
Yeah, we were talking about that during the break that we had.
Because Harry and Lloyd, we couldn't figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
Dumber and a Queen.
We couldn't figure it out. So, hey, dude.
Yeah.
I hope y'all enjoyed.
Peace, y'all.
Salute.